Please put your hands together for Alejandro A Alonso Galva.
All right, I have this bandage, sorry, so my hamstring decided to break up with me during an ultimate frisbee game yesterday, so if I like flinch at all, it's just because, my youth is getting a divorce with me, I guess. Okay, this story I'm calling it 3 breakups, 1 breakup, and you'll see why. So my sophomore year at the University of Iowa, I had this roommate that was kind of a different type of dude. He had this amazing setup in the dorms. I remember moving in a few days after him and walking in, and the place was just lit. There was decorations everywhere. He had posters and good music and everything happening, and I just thought, all right, I got a home here. This is fantastic. This is great. We had roomed together because we had a lot of similarities. We were both immigrants. We both had, the immigrant parents who were really on us about making sure we're taking our tests and studying. He was from India and I was from Puerto Rico, and we thought, hey, I think this will work. And it became very clear early on, though, that we had a few differences. For one, he was an amazing cook. I remember he would make dinner sometimes, and at one point he made this amazing curry, and I looked at him and said, Raj, if I wasn't straight, I think I'd wife you up right now. And I remember one time when I came home from my girlfriend's house, we'd gotten in a fight in the middle of the night, and I decided I had to go leave her apartment, come back to the dorm. And I remember coming back into the dorm, and there were Christmas lights everywhere and decorations, and I walked in and I thought, life's okay. This guy makes a good home. Life is okay. Forget that it's September and there's Christmas stuff everywhere. Life is okay. But he also had his weird roommate habits, right? Every roommate has their strange habits. One of his weird habits was that he'd get phone calls from India at 3 a.m, and they'd wake me up, but they wouldn't wake him up. So suddenly I'd be talking to his family who spoke Hindi, not English, and I'd have to explain in English, hey, he's sleeping, sorry. His other really bad habit was he was way too, ambitious about his wake-up times. He thought that he only needed 3 hours of sleep. So he would set his alarm for 4 a.m, thinking he was going to take over the world, except he would snooze until 8. And again, who was clicking the snooze button? This guy. But, he was a good guy. He kept a good home. It was fantastic. And, you let those things slide. But over time, he started to nag at me about certain things. I'd come home from, all my classes and the student orgs I was in and stuff, and he'd be like, where have you been all day? I was studying at the library. Another time he'd be like, hey, I texted you a few times. You didn't text me back. And I was like, I was busy. I had things to do. And this became a little bit of a pattern of him just bugging me. And then one day he sat me down. He's like, listen, I got to have a talk with you. And I'm like, okay. He's like, it's just, our dynamic's not working for me right now. And I'm like, all right. He's like, I always expected my roommate to be kind of like the Hollywood roommate that is your best man at the wedding and you hang out all the time. And I was like, oh, okay. It's like, you don't spend a lot of time with me, and I just need you to spend some time with me. So I'm like, okay, I'll work on that. We started spending a little more time together. We started playing chess because that was something we had in common. I love chess. He's from India, of course. He loves chess because that's a stereotype, I guess. And I remember one specific time we were playing so much chess that the same girlfriend that I was dating at the time was standing outside the hallway, and she got all upset because I was playing too much chess and not paying attention to her. And I remember chasing her down the hallway before she got on the elevator and saying, what's going on? Why are you leaving? And she's saying, I've been standing outside. You've been playing chess for 2 hours. You haven't said a word to me. And I remember thinking, but I was just playing chess. I wasn't doing anything wrong. She's like, but you weren't paying attention to me. And this is a pattern. This is something you do. And before she got on the elevator, she said, listen, it's over. We're just clearly different. It's over. And she got on the elevator, left, and I just remember kind of sulking back to my dorm, telling Raj, and he goes, well, that means we can hang out more. Yeah. Anyway, so things keep going on this way with Raj for a while, and one day I come home from one of my many student org meetings, and the dorm room is empty. Remember, he had built this place, so nothing I owned was really in there. This was his home. I was just like a visitor. It was empty. And I've never been married, I've never been divorced, but I imagine this is what it feels like to come home from work and find your wife has left you. And I sat there at the door like, oh my God, it's happened. He's gone. And there was one item, of course, me being like, I guess, the more dude-like person, if we're going to go gender stereotypes in the relationship. The TV was mine, so the TV was still there. And I remember taking like the standard issue dorm room chair and just like sitting it there and watching TV. And there was a few boxes left, and he walks in and goes, oh my gosh. He hadn't expected me to be there to grab his last bit of things. And we like stare at each other, me from the seat, him from the door. And I'm like, hi. He's like, hey, I didn't expect you to be home. So, buddy, what's going on? Well, we talked about it, and like, you just didn't spend enough time with me. So I moved in with Ronaldo down the hall. And again, I'm a straight man. There was no romantic feelings here, but there was this part of me that, wanted to stand up and be like, but baby, I can change. Just give me another chance. He grabs the last of his things and he moves out. Fast forward to about 5 years later, I'm living in Madison, Wisconsin, and after working really, really, really hard in undergrad, I am partying like crazy when I got here. Partying so much that I remember at one point I got done with like a 12-day bender where the routine was salsa dancing till 3 a.m, eating IHOP of all things, passing out, waking up with a hangover, salsa dancing again. Like, it was just this routine over and over and over again. And I remember after like 12 days of this once, I woke up and I'm like, I need to read a book. I need to do something with my life. And I grabbed the Hunger Games of all things. And it was like, Katniss Everdeen, save me. And it was a good thing too that I started to kind of like make this turn and get my life together, because at one of the next parties I was at, in walked this girl. We're gonna call her Amy for the sake of the story. And the moment I saw Amy, that Hunter S. Thompson quote went through my head of like, oh man, my life was going so well, why did she have to walk in? And according to her, when she saw me, the first thing she thought was, I'm gonna sleep with him. And when you're 24, that might as well be love, right? Just a pure declaration of love. So we had a really good time that summer. We hung out, we played a lot of sports, we partied, and one day I'm feeling like really confident, and I make her dinner, and I like set our beers in front of us, and she goes, I can't drink that. And I say, huh? And she's like, I'm late. And I'm like, late, like you have a meeting later, or no, I'm late. And obviously I start to get it. And we realize like, oh, she's about, I think it was at this point 9 weeks late or something like that. Late enough that it was cause for concern. That wasn't supposed to be funny, but go ahead. It wasn't funny to me. And I remember I rushed out to Walgreens. I went and got like 10 of those like little things you pee on and everything. And we kept going through them. Some would come up positive, some would come up negative. I'm like, what does this mean? I don't understand. But at one point, in the middle of the dinner, I got down on one knee, and I didn't propose so much, but I looked at her and said, listen, if this is happening, I'm for it. I'm all for it. I'm down for this. Like, let's make this happen. And being the unemployed partying person I was, the next thing I did the next day was, I got to go find a job. So I went out and I applied to the Madison School District, got a job as a Spanish teacher. I was lucky enough to immediately land a job actually at Sherman Middle School, which is a few miles that way. I remember at the union meeting orientation, I sat next to some of the teachers and asked them like which insurance I should pick for Amy, so for like her maternity and care and all that kind of stuff. And they like picked it for me, and I got on the phone and everything. And we started a life together, and she was wonderful. And I remember she would cook these amazing meals, and at one point I looked at her and I said, for the first time in my life, listen, this burger's so good, I'd marry you over it. And I remember at one point I came home and she had the Christmas lights up. And life was just grand. And she made a good home. And about early in the second semester, she started to say, hey, like, you need to text me more often. You need to like just call me more often. You need to spend a little more time with me. I know you're busy. I know it's your first year teaching, but I just need you to spend a little more time with me. And she wrote me this, she handed me this letter. It was like a hefty weighted letter, right? Like clearly she'd put time into this. She's like, please read this. I was like, okay, I'll read it. Weeks passed, had dinners. She'd be like, hey, have you read the letter yet? No, I have not read the letter yet. Hey, have you read the letter yet? No, I haven't read it yet. And one day, I got off of work, went to go visit her, and she was sitting at her table, at her dinner table, with all my stuff packed up. And she looked at me and she said, listen, you just didn't spend enough time with me. I just don't understand why you couldn't spend time with me. We were starting a life together. And I looked at her and I said, I can change. I can change. I know I can change. She said, I don't think you can. I think this is just who you are. And at this point, she'd taken care of the pregnancy. She'd taken care of all of that. And it was over. And she asked me, do you have that letter? Have you read it yet? And I said, no, I still haven't read the letter. And she said, I want it back. And I got really mad. I'm like, no, I'm not giving it back. She said, you haven't read it. Why does it matter? Give me back the letter. And I said, no, out of just pure stubbornness. About 3 months later, I opened the letter, and there's a lot of personal things, so I won't go into it, but there's one line that stuck out, and it stuck with me for the rest of my life. And it said, I lost track of the nights where I fell asleep crying, waiting for you to call. And so, moved on with my life, had to pick up the pieces from that first real relationship. And at some point, I realized that a lot of my friends from college that I'd hung out with, I hadn't talked to in a long time. A lot of people here in Madison that I'd partied with that first summer, I hadn't talked to in a long time. And I started to see this pattern where even how you treat your friends affects how you treat your family, affects how you treat your significant others, and how it all comes together. So don't let the days become countless where you don't tell the people in your life that you love them. Thank you so much.
Great job. I'm going to turn down this freaking bright light. Man, takes guts to get up here and be like, I was the one who fucked up. The reason everybody laughed is because you were like, yeah, she was a little late. Like 2 months and 1 week. She's just a little late, just nine weeks, whatever. We got time.